Hey everybody, I hope you're doing well. I'm cooking I'm trying to make some zucchini bread today. We'll see how it turns out. But I just wanted to take this time to think about fractions and maybe review some fractions with you today. If you ever cook at your house or help your family cook, it's a great way to review some simple math skills that are real life math skills. So you can see here, I have, first of all, here's some of my ingredients that I'm getting ready to mix. But I have my measuring spoons, if you can see that. I'm trying to hold the camera. But I have an eighth of a teaspoon, a fourth of a teaspoon, half a teaspoon, and then a whole teaspoon. And so you can use this to kind of review and think about fractions. I know that if I have 1/8 of a teaspoon, if I put two of those together, it would be 2/8 teaspoons, and I could simplify that to get 1/4. So sometimes if my 1/4 spoon is dirty, if I've already used it for an ingredient, but I still need a fourth of a teaspoon, I can take two of my eighths and just dump in 2/8 of whatever it is I need, whatever my ingredient is. And then of course I know that 1/4 teaspoons or 2/4 teaspoons would equal half a teaspoon. So if my half teaspoon was dirty and I needed an ingredient that called for half of a teaspoon, I could just put 2 spoonfuls of the 1/4 teaspoon to equal 1/2. Same thing with a whole teaspoon. I know that 2 halves equal a whole. So I can use those when one might be dirty. I can use others to, use some math and some equivalent fractions to solve those problems. And then same thing with my measuring cups. I have a fourth of a cup, a third cup, 1/2 cup, and 1 whole cup. And so sometimes I might need a whole cup, and if this is dirty or if I've already used it for something else, I can use 2 half cups. I could use 2 1/4 cups to equal 1/2 of a cup. So it's just a good way, first of all, in case if you're cooking and adding a lot of ingredients, sometimes you have to mix and match, but it's also good to see all of the measurements lined up, and so that can help you practice knowing off the top of your head that 1/8 is smaller than 1/2, or 1/4 is smaller than 1 whole. Same thing over here. I can see that a third is actually smaller than 1/2. So it kind of helps you create that visual as well, and helps you solve the problems mentally. You could also do I guess not an experiment, but sort of an experiment. You could test it out. You could say, okay, are 2/4 really equal to a half? So you could measure something. It might not look like it at first. See, it might not look like it would take 2/4 to equal a half, but you could measure something, even just water, you could measure it out and pour it in to the half cup and see that 2 of the 1/4 cups actually equals half a cup. So anyway, hope you're taking time to try out something new, maybe make a new recipe, think about those fractions. I know earlier in the year I made a pasta salad and I brought in my recipe to class, and we talked about how I wanted to make, it was either half of the recipe or maybe 1.5 times the recipe. So sometimes you have to multiply fractions. If I have a recipe that calls for 1/4 cup of flour, but I only want to make half of that recipe, I could say 1/2 of 1/4 or 1/2 times 1/4 to see how much flour I need for that recipe. Anyway, hope you're doing well. Bye.